Hey, how's it going everyone? Jinsula here with a brand new Pokemon Go video. I hope your weekend went really well and let's get right into it. Alright, so this is going to be a follow-up video to the one that I posted yesterday morning where I talked about how Niantic's biggest mistake with the Fusion Raid Day this weekend was not giving us another Cosmog beforehand, but I actually want to talk about the Fusion Raid Day in particular because I think my experiences are going to be very similar to a lot of other players, and I do think there are a lot of good lessons that Niantic could learn regarding how they could do raid days in the future. So first and foremost, let me just come out and say that the Fusion Raid Day was actually really positive. I had a really good time and I was able to get a lot of these raids done. And I think for a lot of players, they were also enjoying the experience, mainly because of a lot of things that Niantic did that they typically do not do when it comes to raid days. I think the biggest contributing factor has got to be the Beast Balls. The fact that you didn't have to worry about whether or not you could catch the Necrozma after the raid ended, that was something that a lot of players really enjoyed, including myself. I think anytime they have a raid day featuring a legendary Pokemon or even a mythical Pokemon, one of the biggest anxieties is whether or not you're going to actually catch the Pokemon if you come across a good one. But because we didn't have that worry throughout the entirety of the raid day yesterday, I feel like a lot of players were just actually enjoying the raids as opposed to worrying about whether or not they're going to catch it. I mean, that's been a big issue when it comes to raid battles among especially newer players. I mean, even with Mega Latios raids as of late, I've been hearing a lot of people just being very frustrated with the difficulty of catching Latios after the raid is completed, because that's really the major prize. That's the whole reason why you're actually spending raid passes. It's because you want to catch the legendary or mythical Pokemon after the raid ends, and if there is a very low chance that you'll be able to catch it, then a lot of players are going to feel like they're not getting their money's worth when they buy a whole bunch of raid passes. But that issue was seemingly non-existent yesterday during the Fusion Raid Day. So basically speaking, I really feel like the catch rate should not be an issue with these raid days. If they were to give us Beast Balls for pretty much every single time there is a raid day, or something similar, maybe they could have an increased catch rate, then I think a lot more players would actually enjoy these raid days and they would end up spending more because they would be able to do a lot more raids. I think one of the biggest things that players aim for when it comes to raid days is getting 100% IVs for the particular Pokemon. That's at least something that I saw a lot within the people that I raided with yesterday, in that people were willing to do extra raids even if they had enough fusion energy for the fusions because they wanted to get themselves a perfect IV Necrozma or something close. So I think because of that, a lot more players want to make sure they're able to catch the Pokemon without having to worry about a 100% IV running away. That's definitely a sentiment that I often feel when it comes to these sort of raid days. It was also something that Niantic didn't announce beforehand. It was kind of like a nice pleasant surprise for anyone who decided to participate. And I think this might have been a bit of a misstep. I think there were players out there who would have raided a lot more, or they would have actually planned out to raid a lot more if they knew that Beast Balls would be something that you would get for every single catch. I mean, I don't know if any of you remember this, but there was a raid day sometime in the past where they had pretty much every single Ultra Beast, and they allowed us to catch those with Beast Balls as well, and it was definitely a very successful raid day. So I do think this is something Niantic should consider. At least lowering the catch rate for these Pokemon would definitely go a long way, especially for people's enjoyment. Now, another contributing factor to why I feel like this was such a positive experience was the frequency at which raids reset. So if you were at a location with plenty of gyms, you were not necessarily required to travel to a different location if you completed every single raid at that location. And that's mainly because every single raid would reset after 30 minutes. So it really did create a sense where you just had to stay in one spot and you could get a whole bunch of raids done. And I thought this was very convenient, and I thought it was a huge quality of life improvement for these raid days. I mean, if they were to do this with every single raid day, then you wouldn't necessarily have to plan out a major route in order to get as many gyms and raids done as possible. I just feel like all you have to do is go to like one major hotspot with maybe 4 or 5 gyms, and you would essentially just have to park it there and you could do as many raids as you want. And that's mainly because there was just such a high frequency of raids every single hour. And I totally recognize that this may be because Necrozma is a bit of a special case, considering that there's two different forms of Necrozma, and you need to collect two different kinds of energy in order to get two different fusions. But I also feel like this is something that could work towards Niantic's benefit, because if there's a higher frequency of raid battles within a given location, then people are going to do more raids, and that also means they're going to buy more raid passes. So yeah, it's a bit of a win-win, because for players it's a huge quality of life improvement. There's a much higher potential to get more revenue, so I really hope this is something that is a permanent fix. So yeah, I think these factors contributed to a very positive experience for a good number of players, but it wasn't a perfect raid day by any means. Of course, there was the issue with Cosmog. I think that soured a lot of people's experiences, considering that if they did not have either Solgaleo or Lunala, they wouldn't be able to fuse their best Necrozmas right away, and I think for a lot of other players, it really came down to RNG, considering that when it comes to raid days, there's a lot of things that players are going after, perfect IVs and shinies, all of that is contingent on good luck, and if you had really bad luck yesterday, then you're gonna spend a lot of raid passes and not get the exact thing that you want. And that's really unfortunate because that just comes down to game design. I really wish Niantic had some sort of bad luck protection system in this game, because if people are looking for shinies and people are looking for perfect IV Pokemon, then they should at least be able to get those in some way later on in the future, as long as they are consistently raiding. I think a bad luck protection mechanic would definitely be very popular within Pokemon GO, because at that point it would be one of those things where people would not complain about some players getting very lucky, whereas they themselves just hardly ever come across perfect IV Pokemon or shinies. Maybe someday in the future that would be something that Niantic would implement, but I do think that there would be some pushback to that, considering that for they themselves, that's probably one of the reasons why they have so much longevity with this game, because it takes so many raids right now to get yourself a perfect IV of a legendary, and if people get those perfect IVs eventually, then they might actually quit out on doing any more of those raids. But I actually disagree with that, because when it comes to this game, it's probably ideal to get yourself a full team of 6 or 5 of those legendaries at perfect IVs, and then there's other factors like PvP and PvP IVs and different things like that. So I really do think that for Niantic, it's something that they should look at. I think the long-term success of Pokemon GO would not be hindered by it, but at the very least, I do think that for one of the reasons why players were frustrated with yesterday's raid day was simply due to RNG, and that's something they have no control over. But yeah, even with that said, I still felt like yesterday was a big win. I think if they were to do more raid days, they should take some of these positive lessons and apply them, because when it comes to raid days, they are some of the best content in Pokemon GO, and as long as Niantic is continuing to iterate on them and continuing to polish them, then I think a lot more players will be more enthusiastic about this game, and they will definitely be inclined to spend more money as a reward for Niantic doing some of the right things. But until then, I do think there's a lot of things they need to improve on, and I really hope they end up doing that, because yeah, it's very rare that we have these sort of wins when it comes to Pokemon GO. And anytime we do get them, it's sometimes followed up with a lot of doubt that Niantic will actually take some of those positive lessons and apply them in future content. So hopefully that's not going to be the case with this time, but I really am hopeful at the end of the day, because yesterday was such a positive experience. But in any case, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding everything that I talked about down below. Did you yourself have a very positive Necrozma Fusion raid day experience, or were you disappointed for whatever reason? Definitely share what those reasons are down below in the comments, and let's have a great discussion. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. If you ended up enjoying it, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here, and also don't forget that little bell so you can stay notified on whenever I upload videos. And real quick, let me give a shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. You all make this channel content possible. If you want to support the Jinsula channel, the best way to do so is by joining my Patreon. And if you become a paid Patreon member, you get the benefit of getting a permanent spot on my in-game Pokemon GO friends list. So when it comes to remote raids and the friendship system, if you want to play Pokemon GO with me, then do consider joining my Patreon. And if you want to support my channel in a completely different way, you could do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula. I'm on the platforms that you see on screen. Make sure you go over there and give me a follow, and you'll get access to some bonus content. And that's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I hope you have a really good week this week. It's definitely going to be interesting. Bye!